My beloved children, listen closely, for this is a story born of tears, quiet kindness, and love that walked its path without knowing whom it was saving in the spring of 1992. In a small town called Harlan, tucked deep within the rolling hills of eastern Kentucky, there lived a boy named Daniel Brooks. The town was not large, one main road, a diner that closed before sunset, a post office that smelled of old paper, and houses weathered by time and coal dust. Poverty was not a stranger there. It was a neighbor who never moved away. Daniel was 9 years old when the word orphan settled upon his shoulders like a coat too heavy for a child. His parents, Mark and Evelyn Brooks, were reported killed in a highway accident on Interstate 75 near Corbin on a rainy October night in 1991. The report said their car slid beneath a truck. No survivors. Closed caskets. Final prayers. Daniel remembered the night, clearly not the accident, but the knock on the door. The sheriff's hat in his hands. The way his Aunt Ruth's knees gave out when she heard the words. The sound of rain on the roof, as if the sky itself was mourning. From that day forward, Daniel belonged to no one and everyone at once. He moved into his aunt's small wooden house on Clover Fork Road. Ruth was kind but tired, her hands cracked from factory work, her eyes carrying grief. She never spoke aloud. She fed him, clothed him, and made sure he went to school, but she could not give him what he missed most: the warmth of being known completely at night. Daniel whispered prayers into the darkness. He did not know formal words, only honest ones. He asked why love could be taken so suddenly. He asked whether his parents could still hear him. And sometimes he asked nothing at all, because silence felt closer to truth. By the time he was 14, Daniel began working odd jobs. Harlan did not offer many choices. He stacked shelves at Miller's Grocery, swept floors at the diner, and in winter, shoveled snow from porches for a few dollars. He saved every coin in a tin box beneath his bed, not for toys or dreams, but for something he could not yet name. In the summer of 1998, when Daniel was 16, a new routine entered his life. Every Tuesday and Friday afternoon, after school let out at 3:15 p.m., he walked past the abandoned rail tracks toward the northern edge of town. There, near an old red brick church that had not rung its bells in decades, stood a modest soup kitchen run by volunteers from surrounding counties. It served meals to anyone who asked no names, no questions. Daniel did not go there to eat. He went there to serve. The head volunteer was Mrs. Helen Carter, a widow in her early 60s with silver hair and a voice gentle enough to calm storms. She noticed Daniel on his first day, how he moved quietly, how he listened more than he spoke. "You don't have to do this, sweetheart," she told him once. "You're young. You should be out with friends." Daniel smiled politely. "I don't mind," he said. "Some people need it more." From then on, Daniel became a familiar sight. He washed dishes until his hands wrinkled. He carried crates of canned goods heavier than his thin arms suggested he could manage. When donations were low, he slipped a few dollars from his tin box into the supply jar, never telling anyone. Among those who came to the soup kitchen regularly was an older couple. They arrived together, always holding hands. The man walked with a limp, favoring his left leg, his hair almost completely white, though his face still carried strength. The woman wore faded coats even in warmer months and kept her eyes lowered, as if the world had once been too cruel to meet directly. They called themselves Thomas and Elaine. No one knew much about them. They never spoke of family. They never asked for extra. They thanked every volunteer with a nod and left quietly after finishing their meal. Mrs. Carter once whispered to Daniel that the couple had started coming around. Early 1993, shortly after a severe accident on the interstate, Daniel noticed things others did not. He noticed how Elaine always broke her bread in half and gave the larger portion to Thomas. He noticed how Thomas watched the door while they ate, as if expecting someone who never arrived. He noticed how, when winter came, their coats were not warm enough. One cold December afternoon in 1999, snow falling thick as feathers, Daniel took off his own jacket and placed it over Elaine's shoulders while she was seated. She looked up, startled, eyes filling with tears she did not let fall. "God bless you, son," she whispered. Daniel did not know why her voice made his chest ache. From that day on, Daniel made it his quiet mission to care for them. He packed extra food, portions when he could. He saved his lunch money to buy socks, gloves. Once, even a scarf he left folded neatly on their table with no name attached. He never asked who they were, and they never asked who he was. Years passed like pages turned by unseen hands. In May 2001, Daniel graduated from Harlan County High School. He did not attend college. Instead, he worked full-time at a hardware store in nearby Hazard, commuting 40 minutes each way in an old truck borrowed from a neighbor. He sent money home to his aunt. He continued volunteering. Thomas and Elaine grew thinner with time, their steps slower. Yet they still came every Tuesday and Friday, until one Friday in late November 2003. They did not. Daniel waited. The following Tuesday, they did not come either. Concerns settled into him like an unanswered prayer. On December 3rd, 2003, Daniel asked Mrs. Carter if she knew where the couple had gone. She shook her head. Sometimes life moves people along, she said softly. But Daniel could not let it rest. He remembered hearing Thomas once mention an old boarding house near Pine Street. On December 5th, just before dusk, Daniel drove there. The building leaned like a tired man, windows fogged, paint peeling. He knocked, no answer. He knocked again. The door opened slowly. Elaine stood there, thinner than ever, her hands trembling. "Daniel," she said, though she had never been told his name. That was the moment something unseen began to stir, though Daniel did not yet understand it. Inside, the room smelled of medicine and cold air. Thomas lay on a narrow bed, his breathing shallow. A doctor's note rested on a table nearby. Dated November 28, 2003. Terminal illness. Daniel sat with them that night. He brought groceries. He lit the small heater. He listened as Elaine spoke for the first time of fear, of loneliness, of regret. Thomas watched Daniel with eyes full of something heavy recognition, perhaps, or sorrow long buried. "You're a good boy," Thomas said weakly. "You remind me of someone." Daniel smiled gently, unaware that love had been circling him all his life, waiting for its hour. Outside, snow fell silently over Harlan, Kentucky, as it had on the night Daniel lost his parents, and as it would again before truth finally found its voice. The days that followed were quiet and heavy, like a sky that knows a storm has already passed and left its mark. Daniel returned to the boarding house every evening after work. On December 6, 2003, he brought hot soup in a thermos and fresh bread wrapped in a towel. On December 7th, he brought medicine Mrs. Carter helped him gather from a nearby clinic. He never spoke of sacrifice. He simply did what love had taught him to do, though he did not know its name. Thomas weakened quickly. His voice thinned. His hands trembled when Daniel helped him drink water. Yet his eyes remained awake, watching, remembering. One evening, as the clock on the wall ticked toward 9 p.m., Thomas asked Daniel to sit closer. "Son," he said, breath shallow, "do you know why Elaine and I started coming to that soup kitchen?" Daniel shook his head gently. "We lost everything once," Thomas continued. "Our home, our names, our past." Elaine turned her face away, tears tracing lines she had tried to forget. Thomas closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again, fixing them on Daniel as if time itself were folding inward. "In October of 1991, he said slowly, we were driving north on Interstate 75. It was raining hard. We had just come from signing papers to give our son a better life." Daniel felt his chest tighten, though he did not yet know why. There was an accident, Thomas continued. A truck, skidding. Everything went black. Elaine began to sob quietly. When I woke up, Thomas said, they told us our child didn't make it, that his body was unrecognizable. They said it was better we didn't see him. Daniel swallowed. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. We survived, Thomas whispered. But we didn't know how. The doctors said it was a miracle. But miracles sometimes feel like punishment when you don't understand them. Daniel's hands trembled slightly. He thought of the knock on the door, the rain, the closed casket. Thomas reached for Daniel's hand. Our son's name, he said, voice breaking, was Daniel Brooks. The world did not shatter all at once. It unraveled quietly. Daniel stood up slowly, as if the floor beneath him had shifted into water. His breath came short. His ears rang. No, he whispered. That's not possible. Elaine turned toward him, her face pale, her eyes searching. Daniel, she said softly, what is your full name? Daniel Brooks, he replied, barely audible. Silence filled the room. Thick and holy dot. Elaine reached into a small wooden box by the bed. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside were old photographs, folded letters, a hospital bracelet faded with time. She held up a photograph, a baby boy wrapped in a blue blanket, a tiny birthmark near the left ear. Daniel touched his own ear. Fingers numb. Elaine collapsed to her knees. My son, she cried. My son, we fed you. We fed you with our own hands, and we never knew. He did not cry loudly. His tears came like rain into dry earth deep, silent, healing. Thomas wept openly then, his shoulders shaking. All these years, he said, you were the one giving us food, warmth, dignity. The bread, the scarf. He remembered every choice he thought was small. Why? Daniel asked through tears. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Thomas smiled weakly. Because we didn't know. And because God's love sometimes walks in circles before it arrives. Thomas passed away on December 12, 2003, at 3:40 a.m., holding Daniel's hand. Snow fell again that night, covering the town softly, as if heaven itself wished to keep the secret a little longer. At the funeral in Harlan, Kentucky, held on December 15th, Daniel stood beside Elaine. The church was small, but it was full. Volunteers from the soup kitchen came. Mrs. Carter sat in the front row, her eyes wet but smiling with understanding after the service. Elaine gave Daniel an envelope. Inside were adoption papers dated August 1991. They had planned to temporarily place Daniel with relatives during financial hardship. The accident happened on the way home. Fate had folded in on itself. Elaine moved in with Daniel and Aunt Ruth the following spring. The house grew warmer. Laughter returned, slowly, gently. Like Don. Daniel never left the soup kitchen. He eventually became its director in 2010, expanding it to serve 3 counties. On the wall, near the entrance, hangs a small plaque with no names. Only these words: love always finds its way back. And so, my beloved children, remember this: no kindness is ever wasted. No bread broken in love is forgotten. Even when you do not know who you are feeding, heaven knows. Walk gently. Give freely. Love without asking. Amen.